Okay, so we're recording. Hi, Misha. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Really good. Um, yeah, so it sort of like happened again. I pretty much
Mhm.
decided that every time I saw something on Facebook, that was like bubbling up into a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I was gonna bounce to video, and that this was
Cool.
a way of keeping in touch with people who are on my Facebook, um, and putting out the ideas in a way that's more sincere and more expressive. So,
hmm
welcome to
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
this
Um,
was a cool little offshoot. I wasn't expecting this at all. Like a little status message blooms into a video on your YouTube channel, and now I'm
Exactly,
talking to you.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
basically, what I discovered is that trying to discuss nuanced ideas on Facebook and reach new insights and all that stuff is kind of and yeah, and have good communication on that is kind of like trying to smoke crack and find like long-lasting inner peace and happiness. It's like the same level of pointless, basically,
Yeah.
because it's the social media is like bam, 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 bam. But once you actually get in a conversation with someone, once you actually talk to people and hear them out, it's different.
That's
So,
true.
in general, how are you feeling at this point of this year, this crazy year?
Feeling like I can speak to exactly what I feel right now. Like I feel kind of like, I don't know, just like I'm pretty settled, pretty grounded, although a little bit of like anxiety about the fact that this call is being recorded. But that's just like a nervousness
Okay,
that always shows up whenever I record anything.
cool. Yeah,
So I like to name that just because it's like, oh, once I name that, I'm like, it's not this like quietly hiding little aspect of me that's not being acknowledged. So once it knows that I know that it's there, it kind of softens and
yeah. It's
quiets
like when
me.
you say, "Hey, this is awkward," and then it's a little less awkward. Yeah, like when you're
Yeah, like
talking
I
to
already feel
someone.
better having said that. Yeah, yeah. How are you feeling or how are you doing this time?
Um, I feel like a huge amount of space in my life. So running this business supported venture, which I don't know if you know what I do, but we hire people around the world in different countries to work online for in English doing IT support. And I've been traveling this year with this business. Started I was in Africa, I was in Thailand, I was in like everywhere. And since March, I was in lockdown in Thailand, and I've been going to the countries where I could have the most freedom. So first it was Thailand because there were like no cases of coronavirus. They had a little lockdown, but I was on the island of Koh Phangan, which was super awesome and normal. And then I went back to Serbia, where they had declared the whole thing done in May, at the end of May, and
Hmm.
let out the restrictions pretty much. And so I had a nice summer there, in the middle of which I flew to Belarus, where the president was like openly denying any severity of the virus whatsoever, and everything was open. People were going out and drinking all night and all that stuff. Then I took a road trip
Wow.
to Turkey, which was pretty normal, except for everybody wears masks on the street there, but otherwise they're behaving normally. And
Hmm.
then it was like it started to get really bad in Serbia with the actually third wave. The second one came in July, and then third wave. So I decided to come to Mexico, where apparently everybody was wearing masks on the street until about 3 weeks ago. They had a hurricane, and everybody didn't think the coronavirus was such a big deal after the hurricane almost like knocked down all their houses. And so now
Huh.
I'm in Playa del Carmen on the Caribbean coast of Mexico. So
Whoa.
I've had a few different perspectives on the whole year from three
Hmm.
different continents, and yeah, I still don't know what's going on with this thing, and that's why
Yeah.
it really disturbs me when people think that they know what's going on. They think that they know what the right thing to do is, and like Thailand, first of all, they conquered the virus. They had 3,000 cases in a country of 70 million people. Now they haven't really had any local cases, like just a couple in the last 4 or 5 months. And but there's theories that maybe they have cross immunity from dengue fever, which is a mosquito-borne virus that has similar symptoms and all this stuff. And then Europe, I don't know. Uh, People in Serbia were very irresponsible at one point, but the third wave didn't hit until November, when the late October, November, when the cold weather set in. So, and
Hmm.
the cases there aren't really much higher than Canada, and the cases in Belarus and Sweden, where they didn't do anything government wise, locking down people, they're not really higher than other countries. So it's just like, I don't know what to think. So what do you think? And what about this conversation that you're having on Facebook today?
Yeah, well, what do I think? I don't know. Like I feel like I feel safe in the not knowing because I mean, there's lots of possibilities. There's lots of potential realities, and I can go in many different directions. There's one part of me who's like, is this, you know, it's a little quantum. There's like an area of a part of me who's like looks at it in a quantum through a quantum lens and considering, you know, which reality timeline do I want to subscribe to? Like there's that level of it. And then
Yeah.
there's like the actual tangible, like rooted reality stuff that's like really happening. But then it's like, how do we know any of that is real? Like there's just a lot of questions for me about like reality and what's real, and questioning just very big on a big picture kind of perspective, questioning reality. It's like, I don't know, is that true? Like I'm trying to shed my agnostic lens, but it's really hard because it's served me for such a long time, not knowing. Yeah, for some reason that just feels like a safe place to just hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of is where I'm at. The most dramatic story I can share over the last 10 days or so here in Mexico is I went to Tulum. Really, great place if you're looking for, people who are into like more conscious stuff and all that stuff. And then I went to this gathering and where a bunch of people, it was yoga, it was ecstatic dance, it was something they called synergy circle, and it was just irresistible, and basically everybody was hugging each other, hugging strangers, and it was like, oh my god, it's been so long since I
Oh
did
my
this,
gosh.
and it felt so good. I was so feeling so good. It was on Sunday morning by the beach, by the Caribbean Ocean there, and it was amazing. Anyways, about 4 days later after that, one of the girls who I met there, who I had added on Facebook, posted a long 10 or 20-minute video about how her and some of the other people have coronavirus.
Okay. And then what did that bring up for you? Did you have to get tested, or what do you do in that situation?
Well, first of all, go to the supermarket and buy a few days of food. Of course, wearing a mask and hand sanitizing and all that stuff. Wild oregano oil, garlic, zinc.
Mhm.
Vitamin D is not such a thing here because
Yes, yes.
less of sunshine. But and then sort of like just listen to my body.
Hmm.
And now it's been 8 days and I don't have any symptoms, so I could have dodged a
Yeah.
bullet. The girl who did have it apparently she was about 2 meters away from me, so social distance and kind of. I didn't touch her. I don't know, so I wasn't super like worried, but it was just like, whoa, that close, really?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like. And the one time that I go and hug strangers in the last few months, like I was always like a super like washing my hands after I shake someone's hand guy, but I used to do it in secret. Now I can do it like you know up front. And yeah,
Yeah.
hand sanitizer. Yeah, yeah. I just shook your hand. I'm doing this. We can do it, but that I'm gonna do this.
Mhm.
No, nothing personal. It was where before
Yeah.
people would have taken it personally. I don't know how yeah, it's like the whole thing. It's yeah, we're probably all
I
gonna
had
get yeah.
I had a little social experience just before we went into the second lockdown. Literally, I wasn't really doing very much, to be honest. There wasn't really a lot. There's just not really a lot going on in my world. I'm sure there's social events and things that were happening in this. We have a color system, so it's like there's red, orange, yellow, green, and then gray is like lockdown. So we're like, I think we're in red or gray right now. I'm actually not 100% sure. I'm still confused, but basically, just before we were going into lockdown, which I'm pretty sure that's where we are now, there was a party, mosquito bar, or
Yep.
sorry, was it mosquito?
I think
Is that
that's
what
what
it's
they're
called?
called. Yeah, I think that's what they're called.
Um, so I'm just
Tongi
drawing a blank right
and
now, but yeah. So
Rouge.
Tongi, yeah, they were doing a little bit of a show at Drome and a little performance, and it was
As
socially
they
distanced. They
should,
were.
please. Like
Mhm.
we need that. Tongi needs
Yes,
us and we need him. Like
it was the last day before the everything shut down, and I hadn't gone out to anything for a long time, but being in this group of like people like celebrating, the energy, of course, of that kind of like just, oh my God, like I had no idea that I needed that. Like I was just like, I feel like I've been the walking dead and I didn't even know that I was like that depleted of social energy, that depleted of that like beautiful art infused energy that only comes from like artists expressing themselves in their fullness. Like I'd never even realized. Actually, I was listening to their music for so long. They had their final set coming up and I'm like, I literally can't even stay. Like I have to leave. I didn't even want to like soak up until the last minute because I felt like I just didn't want to be there for them saying bye, like the end. I just didn't want to be there for that. I actually became really emotional.
Hmm.
And so I decided like to leave like in the intermission phase and just said goodbye to some peeps and whatever, and then just went into the mode of like, okay, now we're going into another lockdown, because it was just a really intense kind of build up to like, okay, now that is, the thing that's actually going to bring us all back to life. It was a nice reminder that got me thinking, okay, like that gave me so much life in just a short period of time. And if we can sustain that and keep that alive somehow through this time that we're in, and be able to support our artists so that we can allow them to do this and bring us all back, like watering these plants that are just like parched, like almost dead. Like bring us all back to life, like what can we do for our artists? That's the big question that's in the back of my mind, like
I
how
mean,
can we
yeah,
support.
that's from the ground up. Like that's like because it was always like so easy to, see a guy playing on the street, throw him a coin, go to a show, all that stuff. And now it's just like, yeah, Facebook live streams and stuff like that. And it's kind of like,
Mhm.
no, that's not what we need art to bring us together. And we
Yeah.
need art to it's a tough one, especially I mean, yeah, it's like there must be some way. Like, but it's just crazy. Like all the different perspectives on this stuff. Like, what is a lockdown? Why do we need to do this to people? Why are people not responsible themselves? And it's
Hmm.
true they're not. It is true that a lot of people are not, unless you force them to be responsible. If you don't let them, we know
Yeah.
this. Like, and so, and politicians, like, what do they know about the whole thing? And
Yeah.
and the doctors, what do they know about the whole thing? And where's the
Hmm.
and there just seems to be too much dogma out there, and too many
Yeah.
people who think that they have the puzzle pieces for one corner of the puzzle and they want to say, I know what the whole puzzle looks like.
Yeah, it's really hard to know, and it's really weird. And I think like there's a lot of there's I don't know, I think there's a lot of lack of trust, I guess, in our
Yep.
governments
Yep.
and in our public officials and the people who are saying that they're qualified to answer these big questions. There's also a severe lack of answers. There's a severe lack of transparency. Like we don't really know what's happening. We don't have clarity like on what's happening. Like Trudeau, for example, like his languaging and the things he says. I'm just like, oh my God, I've had a complete change of heart with this guy. Like I used
Yeah,
to support
he's
him and now
always
I'm like,
been quite
yeah,
opaque in terms of his
yeah,
motivations, and you know.
yeah. He's just all he's just really well articulated. He was groomed to be in the
Yep.
position that he's in right now. This
Yep.
like so anyway, so he's handsome. Everyone's like, oh, Prince Charming. They're all like, heart emoji emoticons here. Just
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, so
Which is what you want
I
in
don't
politicians, like. But like, what's
yeah.
behind them? All the lobby groups, and like, is it, you know, because I haven't trusted the medical industry in like, a long time. Like I realized
Mhm.
as a teenager, I think like 20 years ago, it's like, wow, this is bullshit. Like this is absolutely
Yeah,
bullshit. And I know
yeah,
doctors, and they tell me about getting
yeah,
flown down to like islands, like to go to pharmaceutical briefings where the companies pay for them to sort of get indoctrinated into prescribing their medicine and all that stuff. And we know that these companies are incredibly corrupt, and we know that they
yeah.
will, if they have to, if they make $1 billion and they have to pay 200 million out in lawsuits, then that's a net gain for them, and that's makes them happy. Like
Mhm.
we we know that this whole medical and legal and political system is based on this sort of like really predatory capitalism where rich people are essentially taking from us, and that seems to be what's happening with these lockdowns, like the transfer of wealth. Like you're
Yeah.
allowed to go to the big stores, but all the small stores have to
Mhm.
shut, and it's just like, yeah, no wonder people are mistrustful. And where do we go from here
Yeah.
as beings? What's going to happen
Yeah.
next? It's like,
I'm really intrigued by the fact, just on a social level, like why it's so much easier for people to attack their like fellow citizens who are just, small business owners, things like that, who are just trying to keep afloat. I'm surprised how easy it is for people to attack them. I don't know if it was you, I said this to you, but it was just like, but they don't even question their governments. They don't question, like they're question on the small scale what's happening there, but they won't look there. They won't challenge that and what's happening there. And I just find that so interesting. Like why aren't people considering these bigger questions? And there's like a blanket over top of it. It's like, oh, conspiracy theory. Don't
Mm.
look there. That's just conspiracy. And it just disqualifies, it just diminishes the potential to have actual conversation that can be enriching.
Because it cuts
Yeah.
into their identity. Like it,
Yeah. Yeah.
at the core of your identity, you like, this is what I learned, like, not living in Canada, is like, people there, like, they, at the core of their identity, they've bought into that system, and it has to, as long
Hmm.
as, and they're on the inside of that system, so they don't see the bodies, so to speak, lying on the outside of the system. They don't see the suicides. They don't see the people who are, crippled by bad prescription drugs that are erroneously prescribed by doctors who have been bribed to prescribe them. Um, they don't see lives that have been destroyed by the drug war. They don't see, like, people with their student debt that follows them around into their, like, mid to late 30s, like, because if they've bought into the system, it's easy, it becomes part of their identity, and it becomes a dogmatic sort of belief. And anything that, now this is kind of like, oh, we're going to be the ones that are saving this system and society from all of these people who are trying to attack it, because they bought into it.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
collectivist mob mentality. Is just like, whatever the government says, I will do. And the media is really rigged to prop up this sort of behavior. Like, uh, I think, like, you and I probably get most of our information from the internet, from sources that we actually chose for ourselves. Whereas, like, a lot of, I can't imagine what it's like to watch, like, all these cable news things, like, and like, a lot of, like, most of the people actually do. I stopped watching
Hmm.
that stuff
Hmm.
like 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, why do people believe it? Because the messaging is nonstop to get them to believe it,
Yeah.
and there's
Hmm.
money behind it, and it gets so far into their brain, into their identity, into their emotions, into their body, even, yeah.
Yeah, the programming and the conditioning, that really gets me. Like, just before the COVID stuff hit, or it was around October. No, just after, it was November. So I received training in NLP, and
Yep.
I was already in a mode of like studying, just how to program
Yeah.
people essentially. And it got me understanding how the media works. It got me understanding how advertising works, like really in depth. So I'm like just literally watching like them using these exact tools, to program people, like 100%. And so when I say program, I'm not even like being conspiratorial about it. Like, anyone in power has
They
of
call it
course they're going to
television
use the
programming.
tools. Yes, it's a program. Like,
They call them
exactly.
government
They're not even hiding
programs.
it.
Yeah.
It's a program, yes. And so it's exactly what's happening. And I can't even fault people who are watching cable, because they are just deeply programmed and deeply conditioned. And you're right, it is identity. Their identity is being challenged. If we were to try and take that away, it's like we're crumbling their foundation of who they are.
Hmm.
And it's terrifying to imagine too, to consider the idea that those in power who are supposed to keep us safe may actually be corrupt. That's terrifying,
Well,
for a lot of people. That
it's not.
doesn't bring people a sense of, oh, now I know, or now I feel like, who knows, maybe I just know where there's power, there's corruption, and that's like pretty well understood. Like, you can't have power without corruption.
Absolutely. And but the thing about corruption is, there's this guy Leo from actualize.org. Are you familiar with his work?
I've seen a little bit of his
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he has one about the mechanics of evil, and another one about corruption, and he basically talks about how everybody believes that they are good, and that the fight is actually, the fight against corruption isn't just in society, isn't just in politicians, but it's also in yourself. that you
Hmm.
need to watch for like micro corruptions within yourself, like
Yeah.
where you'll take advantage of situations and stuff like that. And then when you start noticing these things in yourself, the micro corruptions where you're sort of taking advantage of situations, cheating a little bit in certain situations, not telling the truth just because it's easier, and then you can easily
Mhm.
extrapolate that sort of mental phenomenon, let's say, into, if you got power and you're a politician, you are faced with tough decisions and you are getting heat from all sides. Like, the more famous you are, the more power you have, the more responsibility you have, the more you're going to have people hating on you, you know and so
Mhm.
add that head trip of being in charge of all of this, all these decisions, and then add the ability to take these little easy way out scenarios, easy way out sort of exits of various things. Yeah, people take them, and it will happen to anybody who becomes a
Yeah.
politician. It'll, no matter how good they start, once they face the reality, I mean, it's yeah. And the more evolved people are, the less it happens. The more work you've done on yourself, you know the less likely you're gonna, like, money is the one that motivates a lot of people to a stage, but and it's rare in politicians to get higher motives than that. But there's good in all of them, because the other thing is, we have to realize that different parts of us operate at different levels of consciousness. You might really believe that you want to do good for society and people and all this stuff on one level, but then once your scarcity modes fits in, once your survival mode kicks in, a completely different level of consciousness from you comes, and it behaves in a completely different way, because it's a more, the reptilian brain, they call it, or like whatever it is. It's just like, I need to do this now because this is how I'm going to survive in this situation. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's really tricky to, I mean, politicians don't have it easy right now. Like, they really don't.
Hmm.
It's this whole situation is really hard on everybody, and the politicians, just want to maintain their political careers, and the dominant voices in society are pushing the fear narrative. The media, the obviously the vaccine companies want to sell their vaccines, and you know, I'm not saying that the vaccines will be good or bad. We are yet to see that, whatever. But I think you have to look at everybody's own individual interest in any given situation, and how quickly that degrades from values into survival.
Yeah, that those levels of consciousness, the survival instincts and things like that. There's like, what is it? Power, sensation, and what's the other one? Oh, just shelter, just like basic needs, right? Like, but there's certain levels of consciousness where we can be triggered, right? Oftentimes, whenever we get triggered by literally anything, we go down into those three levels of consciousness. And like, we can bring consciousness to the fact that we are there. We can actually wake up to the fact that we are operating from those places. And that would be actually quite beneficial, because if we want to actually, say, cross a road that's very busy and we're experiencing a tremendous amount of fear for our survival, we are operating from a lower level of consciousness, and we could potentially make some stupid choices based off of this fear, this sort of like tension. This, we're not like, our eyes aren't like seeing more. We, to be able to cross the road, what we actually need is to be like very present, very calm, slow, and composed, not make any actions that are unpredictable, and just effectively go across the road. And it's kind of a basic, really basic metaphor, but it's useless. It's actually incredibly useless to be in a state of fear when we're trying to achieve a very simple goal. It's not going to have us operating from an optimal place. It's not. We're not going to be able to have access to all of our faculties, because we're in that survival state where we're just trying to get. We're just trying not to die, and that's useful when we're trying not to die, when we have a bear chasing us. But like, and most of the time, it's useless, and it's actually degrading our ability to function optimally.
Yeah, so have you heard about the four stages of competence, like unconscious incompetence, where you realize you don't, or unconscious,
Hmm.
yeah, where you
Yes.
don't know that you don't know something, and then you become
Yes.
conscious of the fact that you're incompetent at it, then you become consciously competent, and then you
Yeah.
become unconsciously competent. And
Unconsciously.
when crossing the road, most of us are in between like conscious competence and unconscious competence. Depends on if you're
Mm-hmm.
how familiar you are with the situation. But as soon as, yeah, you're aware that you're incompetent, and ugh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of
Unconscious, what is it? Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, unconscious,
no,
wait,
then it's conscious
competence,
competence.
conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. So it just
Yeah,
becomes default. Yeah.
like you're doing it from the subconscious, like you just know how to play the guitar or play the piano, or
Yes.
type on
Mm-hmm.
the keyboard. That's unconscious competence, and it comes after you've
Yes.
actually been conscious of learning it and doing it. So
Consciously competent as a practice. Yes, that
so
makes sense.
I believe that most of the politicians in this day and age, and a lot of people, yeah, they're definitely in a stage of conscious incompetence. Like, they're pretty damn aware that they don't know what to do with this thing, with this situation in
Mm-hmm.
society. It's like they're between a rock and a hard place, and there's all sorts of lobby groups and the public considerations, and then who knows what the what's happening on the back end of whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. But like who like what there's so many layers of politics in society. And like on the surface, yeah, the politicians who are in office right now have a very hard job managing all of this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But yeah, having been in all these different countries that took different approaches, I'm pretty much like, nah, the virus is just kind of doing its thing, and it's gonna get there, and it's gonna
Yeah.
probably get most of us. And at least we've had a warning shot. Like, get your health in order, get your immune system up to
Yeah.
speed if you can, and the people who did
Mm-hmm.
that will not be seriously affected by these things, but they will be seriously affected by the restrictions that keep on being put on. So
Yes.
I
What
don't
do
know.
you think? What are some traits that make a good leader?
It's about having a value system that connects humans, like humans and their desires, with a greater, like, you have to be the bridge between individual people and the collective good. So so you need to, yeah, you're not going to be a good leader if you're only in it for yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
some people, you won't be a good charismatic. There's people like that who succeed, and they do have leadership, but they do it by, enacting principles and rules and all that stuff, and sort of distancing themselves from the whole thing. But what makes a good leader is somebody who has an understanding of the contradictory ideas in a situation and different perspectives of different people, yet chooses the one that's most with the principles that are the constitution of whatever they're leading is in harmony with. So I feel that
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge failure of leadership, based on the fact that these countries like Canada, the US, and the UK are founded on constitutions of individual liberty, and freedom, and the ability of free speech and all that stuff. There's a huge failure here in adhering to those principles. Whatever it is, there's a huge failure. Um, and is it necessary? It could be. But at this point, I think it's been proven that we're losing a lot more with these lockdowns than we're losing with the virus infecting people, based on all of the data from the entire world, of all of the different countries that have tried the different approaches. It's inevitable that yeah, and there's a huge lack of leadership in terms of, like, this is what we stand for as as a civilization, and this is why everybody needs to be able to keep their business open in some way, shape, or form, and this
Mm-hmm.
is what you can do to help the virus. Like, they
Yes.
they sort of obscured the message with this sort of nanny state. Oh, now you can't have more than 5 people in your house.
Yeah.
Now you can't go out after 10 p.m. or whatever it is in whatever jurisdiction at this
Mm-hmm.
point. And it's like, maybe, yeah, but because people are irresponsible, they're like, there's so many different levels of consciousness in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like in that other video today I made, I was referencing spiral dynamics. It's a very good system for understanding that, and it's really good to check that out, because it shows you how people go from survival mode into, like, more sort of philosophical um, levels of consciousness that can only arise once you have scarcity out of the picture. So
Yeah.
we're talking on that level now. And once you get to this tier 2 stage, which is called yellow level of consciousness, is systems thinking. And you have to understand that everybody on is at their own stage, and you can't force people. Like, you
Yes.
can't go into Africa
Mhm.
and you can't force a tribe in Africa to start recycling and
Mhm.
eating, like living a modern lifestyle like people in Germany do with their eco everything and their environmental windmills and like it just doesn't work that way. And so you have to understand all the different people at the different levels of consciousness and how to speak to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's but that's leadership, and understanding
Yeah.
the different considerations and perspectives of people, and weaving that into a whole narrative that sort of pleases as many people as possible and achieves the most efficient goals. And yeah, the leaders of, I mean, we're at a really awkward stage of this civilization right now for something like this to happen. I'm sure there will be benefits looking back, but the really awkward stage is the way that we got to the level of development that we're at today in society is with like global capitalism. And
Mm.
it was done in a very expedient way that made people very rich at a huge cost to the environment, at a huge cost to traditional cultures, at a huge cost to, as we were talking about earlier today, people's own sense of themselves and authenticity. Was those things were given up to serve the system. And now that we've achieved the goal of like, yeah, well, people in Canada probably are never going to go hungry, at least. And in most countries, like they're a lot less hungry than they were in decades past. And so now that we're there, we have to reconnect to this, what it is about being human and what it is about being having values and not sort of sweeping things under the rug like this globalist capitalist phase that we're exiting out of has done for the last decades, our lifetime basically, and even
You
since
think we're exiting out of the globalist
seems like
phase?
it.
The global.
The capitalist
Can you
phase.
say? Can you, both of those? Can you just say more about that? I'm kind of curious about what you mean by that.
Yeah, so okay, so the idea, okay, on the spiral dynamics, the global capitalist phase is orange, and that's where people are oriented towards success. It's all about science, it's all about results. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
competitive, individualist. It's like me, 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 me. This is the sort of narrative that we've got growing up in Canada all our lives. Like you need to go and get a good job and be successful and all this stuff, and it's kind of like that. And then so many people reach that, and the next stage after that is they realize they're not happy chasing money. They're not happy
Yeah.
being individualists. They're not happy separating themselves from other people for the sake of wealth and prosperity and progress and whatever they want to call it. And so what happens after that is the whole green consciousness thing. That's what happened in the 60s with the hippie movement, right? Like
Yeah.
our parents, they were a part of something where they were starting to wake up to this stuff for probably the first time. Whereas like, we want to actually chill out and do nice things, peace and love, man, and all this stuff. And it was about connecting with people. Now, then they regressed as they got older into business, business, business. That's where we are now. And again, in our generation, we have a chance to go for this more humane sort of set of values that sort of came out in the hippie and then regressed. And now we have the chance to go into this world. And that's why you see so much narrative about social justice. But there's some really weird ways that it manifests, the transit between this capitalist individualist world into this collectivist more egalitarian, more sensitive thing. I mean, the last collectivist stage before this was the religious one, where people were like on the blue stage, where a traditional society going to war with other traditional societies and fighting for their religion and dying for Muhammad, or killing the people from the country next door. That was the last collectivist stage, and you can see that the globalist capitalist narrative that made the world a lot more wealthy, a lot less war, unless they were going to war for oil, like the Americans in the 2000s and stuff. But that stuff was a step up from actually like people going to die for Christianity or you know whatever, insert X belief system. Yeah, global capitalism was a step up from that, but it also like created these huge corporations around the world that really ruined our food system, so that we're eating crap, and then we get sick and we go and we take these drugs from these pharmaceutical companies that are just raking in billions at the cost of our health and wellness. Basically, you know, if you want to go to this to school in the United States, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and before you even make a buck, you're saddled with that debt, and all this sort of stuff. It's like now everybody's thinking, how do we move on from that? So the next one is like, you know, it's countries in Europe like Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavian countries. They're on the forefront of this sort of thing, you know, free education, environmental initiatives, and there's sort of,
Mm.
you know, Netherlands, everyone's riding the bicycle around everywhere, and these countries are going there, and but
Yeah.
it only happens on the other side of everybody having enough, everybody getting out of scarcity, a social system that can hold the weight of the entire society and provide back for the people. Then you can actually go into this new stage. Otherwise, you're going to regress back into me, my money. I'm gonna if I make money and that guy is poor, I don't care, you know, which is still the way that most Americans live their lives. But in Europe,
Hmm.
it's progressed into more social ideas and more social stuff. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, you know, like you look at this past US election. If for example, if Joe Biden was running in Europe, he'd be considered a right wing politician. Probably like not even centrist, but right wing politician. His policies are right wing in Europe and even Canada, you know, like even there. Yeah, he's pretty much on the line. A few issues with the Canadian Conservative Party. So it's like, I don't know. It's like it's just such a strange time to be alive, but it's beautiful. And you know, I kind of decided that I was gonna view this whole thing go down from the sidelines and while traveling the world and exploring different cultures. So yeah, it's good.
That's pretty cool. That's an advantage to see it from multiple perspectives.
Yep.
And yeah, because it's really easy to, I mean, it doesn't matter, I guess, where you are. We're all still getting some sampling of it. You can't get away from it. There's something kind of weird and interesting about the fact that there's nowhere in the world that you can go where you're like away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Except for
there's,
Belarus.
oh, really?
Yeah, that was the country where I went where nobody gave a fuck. I mean, they were talking
But
it
like,
like but like no, it was business as usual there. But then the last day I was there, they started having massive anti-government protests, that are still going to this day, and that was 3 months ago. So
yeah.
4 months ago.
Oh,
Wow.
Belarus. Okay. Well, I wonder, what do you think about I don't know much about this, so I'm not wanting to take you down a wormhole or anything, but and just hearing what you said, how you feel we're exiting the globalist thing. I mean, there's another train of thinking where people are saying that there's a globalist agenda playing out right now, and that's what they're saying is the new world order. And
Hmm.
I don't know, do you know anything about that stuff, or do you pay
Yeah,
attention to that
sure.
stuff at all?
It's really hard to. I mean, yeah. It's kind of like you described earlier. It's like, which level do you want to be? Which reality tunnel do you want to choose to be on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are some really creepy people that are in positions of power in this world, and that they do have like obviously the military industrial complex and how people like make huge businesses off of designing weapons to kill people. It's like that's an obviously evil business. The pharmaceutical one is questionable, and all that stuff. But the whole yeah, I don't know. I pretty much I was more into reading these types of quote unquote conspiracy theories earlier in my life and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty strange. But it seems like it's just everybody trying to protect their interests most of all. And there are some really sick people that do get off on having power and control society. We all can see that. We all know that. It's a part of the human condition. But is there a massive conspiracy? Could be. But
Mhm.
I mean, me personally, like, I realize that if if there is a massive conspiracy, then I'm in on it. Like, first of all,
How so?
Well, because if you believe in non-duality, then you believe that we are all one consciousness experiencing
Mhm.
itself subjectively. And if you take a
Yeah.
massive load of mushrooms or something, you'll find out that that is the case. And then
Yeah.
if you listen to all these people who are like life is a simulation, it's like, well, in one sense it probably is, because yeah, it's
Hmm.
pretty strange, and strange coincidences happen all the time and all that stuff. And yeah, so if you think of life as conspiring to give you the most fascinating experience to yourself, that
Hmm.
reality tunnel will work out.
Yes.
If you think of they're all out to get me, and
Yeah.
you start behaving like everyone's out to get you, and then you end up in a mental institution, and the nurses there are out to get you because they're kind of like messed up sick people that are gravitated towards that sort of profession, like of being a nurse in a mental institute, probably like not the most sane people to begin with, and they're kind of power. Same with prison guards and all that stuff. There's all these
Mhm.
studies on the human condition of torturing people and all that stuff. They found that those things do happen in those situations, and it's more about situations than people. Anyway, so that's
Yeah.
one thing. You choose the reality. If you believe life is here to serve you, and that there's a grand conspiracy to make your life amazing, then it probably will be like that. If you believe that
Yeah.
the man is out to get you, and yeah. But my personal
Yeah.
belief, when I actually look into my own family history and stuff, and my own personal history in this world, like my father's family was like some sort of European aristocracy from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and if anybody's Illuminati, it's us. So it's like, okay. And I grew up in this neighborhood of Toronto, where if this is where, which is all the old money Anglo-Saxon people.
Yeah. I
Grew up, and
remember.
I went to school with them all,
Yeah.
and I know them all, and I know some of these people are in the positions of power now. I don't we don't even have a neighborhood pub, so like every year when I go home for Christmas, you don't run into these people. In England you would, because there would be a neighborhood pub and you would all go there. But in
Yeah.
Moore Park, Rosedale, Toronto, there's not a neighborhood
Hmm.
pub where everybody goes in the same European. That's sad, because I'd love to know what those people are up to now. But I feel like, yeah, okay, so I do know these people, and yeah, there's some pretty, like, from my experience with both like people in that neighborhood and European aristocracy. Like, I lived in Vienna for like 1 month in an art gallery, like 200 meters from the main square. Yeah, all of us people who have this sort of like old money or aristocratic heritage, we're all weird, eccentric people, but not incredibly evil, and not as conniving, or you know conniving and sort of ah, evil. I don't know. We're not like that. And it's just kind of like, yeah, your family runs like a hedge fund, and they got really rich, and then they have money, and they hang out with a bunch of other people who have money, because like, you end up elevating yourself to a certain level of taste and opinion and consciousness and stuff like that, and you hang out with other people who are dealing with the immense responsibility of making decisions that alter people's lives, like how to run what to invest in, how to hire and fire people. And then yeah, and then there's like, I don't think there's a grand agenda. There might be. It's creepy. It's at the back of my head. I watch out for it, because definitely what happened in the Nazi regime is a huge warning to all of us. Like, that's, you always have to look back, and I have my own grandfather and grandmother's personal stories of that era, and also the communist time that came directly after that, when the communists took over after the Nazis were conquered. And
Mhm.
that's some twisted stuff. But those things, it wasn't like necessarily one group of people dominating the rest. If anything to watch out for, it's the mob of people that's motivated by people who are in power. the, those are the people, the soldiers, the football hooligans who will go and kill people. Like, evil isn't
Mhm.
concentrated at the top of society. It's just people at
Yeah.
the top of society, as I mentioned earlier. It's like, yeah, they have to take shortcuts, because it's not always possible to always make the best decision that's going to please everybody in the best situation. And you're controlling, if you're in a position of power in society, you're it's like you're steering a ship, but you've still got the wind, you've still got the tide, you've still got the people working on the ship, and they're all playing a role in what you can and can't do. And yeah, it's very complicated. I don't think it would be nice if somebody had complete control, but I think it's when you look at all the different things that are happening, it's pretty obvious that that they don't. But with that being said, like those
It
of
would
us,
be nice. It would be nice. Did you say it would be nice?
well, people from all around the
One,
world
one,
want to.
just one person,
No,
just
no,
one
not
person
one
in
person,
control.
but people from all around the world. And
Yeah,
I go all around the world, like with my work and stuff and my passions, and like they all want to move to Canada, right? When I say that I'm from Canada, like they all want to move there.
yeah.
Why? Because it pretty much is the most controlled society in the world, where it's surefire that if you just follow the rules, you're gonna do okay. And but when you look at the monopolies, like the highest cell phone bills in the world from Rogers and Bell and so on and so forth, and all of this
Yeah.
stuff, and all of the sort of ways that the powers in Canada are centrally controlled, it's like, well, yeah, that brings stability. It's
Mm.
so it's hard. It's like, yeah, I got bored of living there. I wanted to go and see the world and go to some places where that are a little more fucked up and people live a little bit more authentically. And there's this spice of life, like of people living with their passions and failing and all this stuff, rather than that sort of thing. That's what I got off on, because I was already
Yeah.
living in this upper middle class perfect. I could have stayed there and made tons of money or whatever and lived in the same neighborhood I grew up in, but there would have been nothing new because I already grew up in there. Whereas most people are
Mm.
aspiring to that. And yeah, I don't know, the people who I see causing the most damage in business and stuff are the people who are aspirational, who are like clawing their way to the top and not caring if they're kicking out the teeth two rungs down on the ladder. But when you actually have like people that I've known who are like generationally wealthy. Like I knew one guy, his family was the oldest law firm in Canada since 1830s, and he was a good guy. You don't stay in that position in society if you don't actually behave decently.
Mm.
And that's
Mhm.
what traditionally in Europe aristocracy brought, was like these people who are relatively stable and staying there by trying to do good for their people. And that's the problem with the whole electing people every 4 years, is it has a little bit of that claw your way up sort of thing, and do what's expedient rather than going for the long game of what's good for society. So
Mm.
it's hard to wrap your head around the conspiracy thing, because yeah,
Yeah.
then they do
I don't.
send people off to war and stuff, and then they do, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't. I don't. It doesn't ever feel good when I put my attention there for too long. Like I do want to keep it in my awareness. I don't know exactly, what's going on, like I said, but having that in my as a continual point of focus, like in the beginning of this lockdown, like I was just bombarded with like material and content, and like that this is what's really going on, and someone seemed to have an inside edge on what was happening, but it was all like conspiratorial things, and there is a narrative, and a consistent narrative that's like that's like all self-fulfilling, like, oh, this fits here because it's fulfilling this narrative, and it's a confirmation bias issue too, like just what's happening underneath there. But yeah, when I pay attention to that, I find it interesting in the way that I find like movies interesting. But like, I don't, if I really were to imagine that there's some really awful things going on, I feel like I just start to feel an incredible amount of anxiety.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
like I
are
just don't
awful
feel good in
things
my
going
body.
on. There are awful things going on. It's really bad. Like, I mean, yeah, that's why I'm hesitant to, yeah, take a vaccine when it becomes available. It's
Yeah,
like because
yeah,
these companies have proven that they don't care if people die as long as they make money. So
yeah,
yeah, there's awful things going on, but you just kind of have to like yeah. But at the same time, if you see the people who are most into the conspiracies, then you can see sort of like that that's part of their wound, that they have something about authority, they have something
like
about
trust, yeah, trust in, yeah.
yeah, you know, trust in being guided, trust in, and they have like
Mm.
something independence. I've got something similar, but mine is sort of just like I want to do my own thing, and I have to play along with certain systems and stuff to do that, and I can also make my own system, and that's essentially what you do
Yeah.
when you're starting a business.
I,
You're putting your little
yeah.
line in the sand and saying, I'm gonna see if I can control this, so that it provides value to people.
I feel like all of our wounds are being brought to the surface of our awareness right now. It doesn't matter what stream of thinking we have, whatever, wherever we feel activated, wherever we feel out of control, it's all pointing back to that wound, whatever that is. And I actually have a very optimistic view of what's happening. And I think that if we really do just allow all of it to be a teaching, all of it to be something that enriches and fulfills us and gives us an opportunity to expand ourselves as human beings, like regardless of what happens, we'll be better than we were before, like just why not let it be our classroom.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's it's easy to say that, and think on that level, but I'm guessing you got some food in the fridge right now, and that your place is warm, right?
Yeah, it is. And if it wasn't, then that would be also another kind of classroom for me.
Yeah,
It's like, it doesn't matter what's happening in life, like Viktor Frankl, being a man's search for meaning, that story of like how he's like in the concentration camps, and like, he got to a point of, it doesn't matter of his circumstances, he still had power of his mind, and he couldn't, nobody could take that from him, like a lot of people want to victimize themselves, in the circumstances that they're in, and play that role, enact that little melodrama and play it out one more time. Let's just play that wound story out one more time in a different way, with a different flavor, with more people, different people. This time I don't have food in my fridge. This time I don't have any heat. Whatever the thing is, right? Like we'll play it out and play it out, and that's life, man. Sometimes we literally just can't control our circumstances, and like, but they do shape us. These experiences they do have the potential to shape us. Doesn't matter what the challenge is. Like my dad passed away last year, like that shaped me, and I could have gone in so many different directions as far as how I moved on from that experience. But I also recognize there's a choice that I could make to allow this to be my teaching. Every opportunity I feel you know conflict, I'm like, okay, what can I learn here? And that's been helpful. It's been really
yeah, no,
helpful.
yeah, the first my life was really easy until actually had wanted to be a musician and start a band and tour around Europe, and then I had to go through all this people stuff, like, because before I was always like the lone wolf guy, and then I had to be a leader of like a band of 6 people, and going through that taught me a lot about life, and now that kind of prepped me for what I'm doing now. Whereas like I'm running a business which has like, more than 50 people working through it full time on it now, and it's like, yeah, you have to go on values. You have to build your values. What it's all about is building values that, like, knowledge of how to deal with specific situations and specific emotions, and how to treat people when they're reacting this way and that way, and how to negotiate this, negotiate that. But at the same you're building, the foundation of your life is built on values, and it's built on connections that you make with other people and meaning that you can bring to other people's lives and all that stuff. And if you can build that up, you just get stronger. And this, I think, yeah, our generation, we've had it too easy, but it hasn't been easy since we've been adults. But as children, we had it too easy, I think. We didn't get the, like, we were everything was great in the 80s and 90s growing up, but then once we went to university, it didn't turn out how they told us it was going to turn out. So there's a huge sense of betrayal there as well, right? It didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's like, and so now we have to reshape the future in a way that sort of counts for the fact that the dreams that we had of how it went for our parents was a lot better. Things from the 50s until the 2000s, at least in Canada, were pretty damn good, and life was stable, stuff was building up, and that happened out of the ashes of World War II, actually.
Yeah,
And now we'll have to build something out of the ashes of this, and
yeah,
it's not going to be easy. There's going to be lots of weird sort of, it could all come back to normal really quickly, as everyone's hoping, but no, this is going to leave some marks.
yeah.
but also good things, but
Yeah.
I can't wait until I get to play with my band again and sing and dance and drink with
Yeah.
strangers and
Yeah, all those things I feel like I took for granted before all of this
hmm
happened, and I wasn't going out so much. So like I was becoming a little bit reclusive. I just wasn't going out a lot. I was going really deep into my own experience, like going through my own transformational stuff. And that was a necessary part of my journey. But and also I would choose not to go out. I would choose not to go out and dance. I would choose not to go out and socialize. And then as soon as it's being I'm being given, I'm like, no longer is there an option. Okay, you were choosing that, and now you don't get to choose that. Now you're just not going to do that. There's that rebellious part of me who's like, well, I want that, like I want the choice to do that. And like, and having that being there all the time is showing me actually how important those experiences are, and how I was taking them for granted. So when it becomes available to us again, like I feel like it's just gonna it will be presented with an opportunity to live in an entirely different way, and to embrace life in ways that we weren't before, because we'll be able to appreciate what we have more.
That's what happened in the
Hopefully.
20s of the last century, and I think we're bound for a resonance or repeat of that. It's going to be fun. I
Hopefully.
just have to get through this. Well, primarily, I think this winter.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm in Mexico. It's like 30 degrees every day. So,
Oh gosh. Yeah. We just have to get through this winter. That is true.
oh yeah, it's dark. It was always like I always hated November in Canada and Europe, and it was just like this year it was especially creepy. It was like 3 weeks ago. I was sitting in my home in Belgrade, and I was just like, no, I'm going to Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Well, it's
think,
actually kind of nice here. It's not that cold.
oh,
It's
good.
been raining. That's it. There was a little bit of snow and it went away. We've had some Indians, what they're calling Indian summer. So there's still people, there's somebody wearing shorts yesterday. Like,
Wow.
it's kind of strange. Yeah.
I don't even know Toronto. Like I've been there for the last 8 years. Since 2012, I haven't been any other time but Christmas. So I think I'm not coming for Christmas this year unless they change the quarantine regulations, and I'll have to come in the summer next year if it's possible.
Well,
So
if you
just see,
do, make sure you come say hi.
yeah,
That
well,
would be
yeah,
amazing.
no problem. Yeah. So thanks for this chat. This was really inspiring for me and so spontaneous as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, and we can do this again sometime when there's more chat on the internet that bounces to a, because this is much better than a million comments on Facebook,
Yeah.
like what we've
So
discussed
true.
here. And I'll post this, and our mutual friends can check it out and feel like they're catching up with us in this era where they're not
Yeah.
catching up with everybody. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks a
This
lot.
was nice. This has been very inspiring. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording now. Bye, guys.